As your work progresses, you will find times when you wish to change the way some of the various elements display on screen and/or in output. There are various tools available in Revit which make changes both globally across the entire project and in a much more specific and isolated ways. Each of the movies in this chapter will explore the topic with progressively more specificity. Here we will begin with the global project-wide settings. So I'm looking at a file called Office, and it's in the Chapter 8 exercise files. And we have a few little challenges that we want to address in this particular view. And I'm going to zoom in right about here. And notice that the line weight that's used on the wall is kind of bold and heavy. Maybe a little easier to see over here on the right. Nice and bold here for the walls. And then the floor is not so much. So it doesn't quite look as appealing as it ought to. I mean, you really want the floor to have the same sort of punch that the walls do when you're cutting through it here in section. So let's go ahead and talk about how we would do that. What controls the line weights and a few of the other settings, but the line weights in general, of all of your elements across the entire project is something called Object Styles. So I'm going to go to the Manage tab and find the Object Styles button over here on the left. And I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And we will get this 3-tab dialog that breaks down all of the objects in Revit into 3 overall groupings. We've got model objects, which is anything to do with the model. We've got all our annotation like text and dimensions, and then anything that might be imported like CAD files. We're going to focus our energy on model objects. Now, these categories are all built into the software. We talked about this way back in the first chapter. Categories are built into the system, and they're controlled by Revit, and you and I can't change them. But what we can change is what line weight or color or line pattern a particular category uses. So we do have that level of control. So for example, if we look at the floors element, we'll see that when we're looking at floors in elevation or in plan, they're going to use a pen weight 2. That's what projection means. So anytime you see it when you're looking at it, anytime you're cutting through it, like a section in this example, it's also using a pen weight 2, and that's why it doesn't look so good. That's why it doesn't have any punch to it. Now, if I scroll down and look at walls, walls are set up a little differently in this file. Projection is set to a pen weight 2, just like floors are, but when we cut through walls, they get a little more oomph because they're using a pen weight 4. So why don't we go in here and take our floors and change that line weight to match what we've got for the walls. So by changing that to a pen weight 4, and then go ahead and click OK, you're going to see that now the floor object has a little bit more punch to it than it did previously, and it matches the line weight of the wall. So everything looks a little better. Now over here, we're still getting a heavy line here and here. You can actually start fine-tuning some of that if you like by going to Modify and using the Join tool, and you can just join geometry to one another, and it will actually start to clean up those intersections for you. So if you want to make this a little bit more of like a presentation type drawing where everything just kind of has one overall profile, you can certainly do that. Now, if I continue to scroll over here, this is a ceiling, and this little tiny item here is actually a soffit wall. So that's just a little piece of wall, and then our floor. And again, we don't have a nice continuous bold profile. So it's really the same issue. So all I would do is go to Object Styles, click on Ceilings, notice the same problem, change that to a pen weight 4, click OK, and now my ceiling gets bolder and everything looks a little bit nicer. One more time, I could do a join over here, and it's basically more of the same. So this is a kind of control that you can achieve at a global level, and that would affect every view in your project. So if I go to another section and I zoom in, you'll see that the floors and the ceilings are already bold here. I don't have to make that change over and over again. So if it's a line weight or a line type, like a dashed pattern or a solid pattern, or a color, although colors aren't used that frequently in Revit views, those 3 things you can do globally in Object Styles. So as you're fine-tuning the graphics of your Revit projects, getting them ready for presentation, the first place to look is in your Object Styles. The reason is because Object Styles are global settings. They apply across your entire project to all views. You certainly want to start there. In the next movie, we'll look at how we can start fine-tuning it on a view-by-view basis. But we start in Object Styles, where we fine-tune the graphics of our line weights particularly, and line types and colors if necessary.